Welcome to Tea with Marie. And I'm pouring a cup of tea here for my lovely guest, who is Ann Hood, the author who lives in Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm Marie Younkin-Waldman, your host. And welcome all of you. And I hope you're home, putting the tea kettle on, sitting down, relaxing. You have your cup of tea. You join us and pretend you're a guest with Ann and
Great.
me, right?
Yeah, good. I can see them all.
Hold the conversation. You can't say anything, but we can say something, right?
We'll take care of that part.
You're hostage. Anyway, we're so happy to have Ann with us today. And Ann has a new book out called An Ornithologist's Guide to Life, which is a group of stories, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes.
Okay.
But you've written 7 books in your lifetime, Ann, right?
Right.
That's
yeah,
great.
This is the 7th.
And you're so young.
Oh, I'm so nice. You're my new best friend.
I think I've read articles that you've written for magazines.
I do
too.
a lot of that. I do. In fact.
Oprah, different things.
Yeah, I did. I have something in Traveler magazine.
Or more. Maybe that was it.
I know, Women Over 40. That's right.
Okay.
I write for a lot of magazines, actually. I just yesterday was in New York with an editor from Food and Wine. I'm going to do something for them. So.
Oh, Food and Wine.
It's fun. You know, it's a little bit different. I write my fiction every day, but it's great to have. It takes a long time to write a book, as you know, and so it's great to have something that you can write and actually finish and have published in a shorter amount of time while you're working on a longer piece.
Do people probably approach you when they want something written?
Sometimes I just, something's on my mind and I write an essay about it or send an idea to an editor. You know, at this point I know a few of them, so I can try to sell things that way, yeah.
And you have an agent that
I
helps you with that?
I do. I've had her for a very long time. She's wonderful in New York and talks really fast. So I think she just talks people until they say, yes, I'll publish it.
I probably wouldn't be able to understand a word she said. But
I have trouble too.
But I wanted to start at the beginning here and get to know Ann a little bit and tell us a little bit. And I hear you grew up in Rhode Island.
I did, in West Warwick. I was a wizard.
Yeah, because I bumped into somebody today who knew you, who went to high school with you.
Yeah, they're everywhere, right? It's Rhode Island.
But that's great. We have quite a few writers and authors that have come from Rhode Island.
Oh, it's wonderful. In fact, I lived in New York for about 15 years before I moved here. And I knew very few writers, and I moved here, and they find you. If you're another writer, they find you and invite you to writing groups and readings. It's really nice.
Are you in a writing group?
Well, I used to be. I'm a dropout.
You're a dropout from the writers group.
But it was funny. I was doing a reading with this book with a writer named Adam Braver, and there was a question and answer period. And somebody said, do you two hang out together all the time? And I said, no, I just met him. Oh, but you live right up the street from him. I said, I do. And I found out I have a writer right up the street, and now we see each other, you know.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. I joined a writing group, and then I just joined another one, and it kind of, find one that's not so expensive, but they're different, and they have different focuses sometimes. But helps keep me on the ball so that I'm going to make sure that I get the writing done.
Yeah, that's right. It's good for discipline. It's good for feedback, because really, who do you go to, you know? I mean, my husband's always like, yeah, it's great, or someone, your mom is like, great, terrific. So you need someone who can...
Your husband might have a job, too, and he might have time to, read the writing all the time. That's what my husband does.
Good point, yeah, good point.
So when you were starting out, and... back up a second. We're talking about, I tend to go back and forth.
That's
We're talking about your life right now. I was going to say, talk about your writing, because you write as though it's a job. It is a job.
It is a
job. Sorry, not as though. So you discipline yourself so that you write on a regular basis every morning?
Well, yeah, I'm a little, basically.
Is that the time when you write?
Between like 11 and 2 are my best hours
because different writers have different times.
Yeah, I'm a slow riser. I have an 11-year-old son, so I take him to school. I come back and I can find 5 million reasons to not write another cup of coffee, walk the dog, whatever. But I think that's important to the writing process, really, Marie.
Do you really?
I do. I mean, I used to say stop procrastinating, but it's almost like warming up the engine. Things are bubbling away. I know I'm going to sit down and have to start writing. I'm starting to think about what I'm doing and where I'm going. And by the time I sit down, I really start writing.
Now, let me ask you another question, because this is kind of a fellow writer thing
Yes.
we're talking about. But do you have a special place where you write, or do you write in your office, and do you have to have the clutter to a minimum before you can focus on your writing.
My clutter's to the back.
No, I have this clutter thing, but I mean, do you write on the computer?
I write on a computer.
Okay.
I do.
So the computer's in there. It takes up most of your desk,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
And then do you try to keep, because one of the writing groups was talking about setting the scene and doing these things and shaking things out before you know all that. There's 5 steps of this. Well, my thing is get the clutter out of there so that it's at a point where I can function.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but I have this sort of functional level.
Well, you know, what I do is I write notes on a piece of paper that I keep. I'm working on a novel now, so this is particular to writing novels for me, but I keep notes on a piece of paper. And when I sit down to write, I put that paper on top of my clutter and I refer to it. You know, I look and I just, sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's just a first sentence, sometimes it's kind of the direction I want to move in. So it'll be what I'm writing toward in a way. And I just look down at it.
But do you have other stuff on your desk while you're writing?
I do, because I'm usually working on several
And does that bother you, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm a piler upper. I think there's people who like their piles and other people like their piles put away.
Pile people.
Yeah, pile. I'm a pile person. My husband likes the piles put away. He opens the door to my study and says, "How can you do it?" You know.
No, but we all have our different levels of what we, you know, it's a relative thing about clutter and so on.
Well, you know, I'm working on several things at a time usually. So right now, my novel is the dominant thing, but I'm also doing several magazine pieces. So I have research. You know, I have my notes for an interview, perhaps, that I just did, and I teach, so I have student papers in another section. So it's organized clutter to me.
Right, and you know where everything is.
And I pull that pile to the side.
It doesn't, in other words, I guess what I'm leading up to, you're not overwhelmed.
No.
But you know what would happen to make you overwhelmed.
That's right.
But then when you get overwhelmed, you start to get immobilized.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's the day you spend just cleaning up your stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
No writing gets done.
Well, let's go back to your life, because you grew up in West Warwick, and it was a large family, small family.
Well, I'm Italian, so I have a
large
large extended family. At one point, we had my family, my immediate family, so there were 4 of us. My grandmother and my great-grandmother and my aunt.
Living in the same house?
The same house. My mom still lives in the house where she grew up, the house where she was born. It's the house my great-grandmother bought when they came from Italy back in the late 1800s.
And where did they come from in Italy?
Near Naples. I think the big immigration was actually from
Itri?
there. No, it was near, it's called Caserta, like the pizza. So it's near Caserta, up in the mountains.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, because we had... what's his name? Sal Mancino, the photographer, on once. And I know he was doing a project about Itri, because a lot of people from Italy came from Itri and just sort of resettled in the Knightsville section in Providence. And it was almost as they just brought the whole culture with them.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's what it's like. When I was growing up, it's not that way now, but my little area of West Warwick, which is called Natick, people in the streets still spoke Italian when I was a kid. And, you know, you saw the typical Italian grandmas. I lived with mine, but, you know, they would come over for coffee, and everybody had grapes and big gardens. And
everybody trying to take care of everybody and that kind of thing.
It was a great community.
And they had a farm nearby, probably, right?
Well, they had a lot of land where they grew things. And like my great-grandmother raised, I mean, we had chickens in our yard, and it sounds like it was so long ago, but it was the 60s. I remember going to this girl's house.
You're so young.
I'm so young. It must have been the 80s. No. But I remember going to this girl's house in like 2nd grade, and her grandmother was visiting from Kansas, and she was making a cookie called a snickerdoodle. You know, it's like a little cinnamon cookie. And their house was so modern, and the grandmother had on a dress. It was just so different from how my family was, you know, where we had chickens in the yard and little black kerchiefed grandmas, and you know, cooking all sorts of weird stuff.
Do you take some inspiration from that when you write?
You know, I do. I wrote, one of my books was nonfiction, and it was about that, about growing up in an Italian family. I went back to find my roots. I took my mom and some of my aunts and uncles, and we all went back to the town. So
I think that's what Sal was kind of doing when he did that photographic study.
It's really moving when you go there and really see the places you heard about when you were a kid, you know, and really see what it looks like and what they came from.
It's added such a large part of Rhode Island with such a big Italian culture.
Absolutely, and the immigrant culture in general. I mean, in West Warwick with all the mills, you know, immigrants really were that town, and so When I was well older, I learned, well, that's the Polish section where they settled, and the Portuguese section. It was still very ethnically not segregated, but glopped together. Yeah, yes,
well,
and, yeah, which was great, really. I mean, you learned a lot about other cultures that way.
Now, you went to the local schools and high schools and so forth.
I did.
And did you like to write when you were growing up?
Yeah, I did. You know, I was on the school newspaper and the yearbook editor and the kind of typical things you would imagine a writer likes to do. But, you know, I wasn't from a family, and it wasn't a town where they knew what to do with someone who wanted to be a writer. I mean, no one could advise me, really.
Right, West Warwick, you think of West Warwick, you think of factories and industry. And
a different kind of mentality. And actually, I'm not sure I articulated that's what I wanted to do. It's just what I did. Every day I wrote little stories, little poems. I kept notebooks filled with them. And
now, did you have any influential teachers reading
I
your
had
English
the best teachers. I loved all of my teachers. And when my first book was published, I invited many of them to the publication party, English teachers. I love teachers. My 9th grade English teacher was a woman named Pat Calabro, who had very high standards, recognized the kids who really loved writing, and I loved every minute of her class. My 7th grade teacher had been teaching forever by the time I had her, Miss Gibney. And again, we learned grammar. I used to love it, diagramming sentences. Only someone who's going to be a writer loves that. You know, I used to just love
I like that too, actually.
You know, I did. I loved all of that.
So at home, but were you a reader when you were growing up?
I was a huge reader. All of my family were mathematicians and science. And I was really an anomaly. You know, it was funny. I would sit and read. I didn't like to play out in the street. You know, the kids would be playing dodgeball and kickball, and I was always afraid my glasses were going to break. You know, I was one of those kids when the ball came, and I just wanted to sit and read. And my mother, put that book down. You know, go out and play. And I used to my favorite day was the day my mom would take me to the library after school, and I'd get my books for the week. And this is actually funny.
What are some of the books that you liked when you were growing up?
Well, when I was young, Little Women. I know that's a classic answer. It's almost a cliche, but I remember I was in maybe 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and I had it, and I was at the part where Beth dies, and I couldn't put the book down. And I was one of those kids who never got in trouble, you know, and I had the book in my lap, and I was pretending to listen, and I got so immersed in the story that I missed, like, standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance and, you know, the morning exercises they used to call them.
You hid the books behind your desk?
Yeah.
That's cool. Wow.
You know,
really
all of a
were,
sudden I was aware of everybody sitting back down, and I realized I had never stood up, and I was red, you know, and the teacher said, she was great, you know, this teacher had been teaching forever. She said, Anne, I have to see you during recess. And I thought, I am in trouble, you know.
Did you get involved in plays and things? I know they used to have plays when I was in elementary school.
I did.
Did you like to do that too?
Yeah, I was in the drama club. I loved all of that. But when I went to college, I went to URI, and when I got there, I didn't know what to major in. All I liked to do was read and write, so I majored in English. At that time, there were no creative writing classes offered.
Now, what year did you graduate from URI?
78.
Okay, I graduated from URI in 76.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, well, I went back to school 10 years, you know, later.
Oh, you
that's
did.
Why, that's why you're kidding. After I had kids and stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. So my husband graduated in 76 from URI.
He's probably in my class, but one of those students that goes back to school 10 years later, you're just kind of commuting. I had one little girl putting her in nursery school. She sat behind me in my French and English class.
Well, that's great. Good
but then
for you.
She went to the nursery school when I went to my science labs and that kind of thing.
Wow.
So I don't know, but we did have a reunion a few years ago. Maybe he was there.
I don't remember if he went.
Because Younkin-Waldman is also in that class, the DJ and the science teacher who got the award. Yeah.
Can I tell you, my husband was one of the people who knows everybody. I cannot
what
walk
was
down the
he?
street
What is he, a
with
businessman?
this guy. Yes.
Yeah. Is he on the URI or whatever?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh,
okay, now we put a big plug in for URI.
Yes,
we can
yeah, go URI
forward.
programs. But when I went,
love us, right?
when I went there and I majored in English, it was strictly literature. They
You
didn't
must
have
have
creative
had
writing.
some English professors that I would recognize the name.
Dr.
Thomas
Warren
McCabe.
Smith, did you?
Dr. Smith, I never had him, but I wanted
my
to. He was the Shakespeare expert.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Oh, and we had a lunch date like every Thursday. We'd go to the.
Oh, you were so fortunate. This gentleman was the best.
He was the teacher you read about or see in a movie. You know, he really was great. And he retired, I guess, just a few years after I graduated, because I went back to